talking about banning food imports from the U.S., kind of along the lines of your reciprocal
Why is that?
tariffs.
Why?
Reciprocal tariffs, they don't like the
That's all right. I don't mind. Let them do it. Let them do it. They're just hurting themselves if they do that. I can't imagine it, but it doesn't matter. We're having reciprocal tariffs. Whatever they charge, we charge. Very simple. If a certain country like India, which is very high tariff, if they charge us X dollars, we charge them X dollars. It's all right. It's a fair thing to do. Even the media said it was fair. And it's going to be very good for the United States.
It cannot be overstated how much Donald Trump does not care about the effects of his terrible policies of his awful administration on Americans. Donald Trump does not care that his policies are raising prices. Donald Trump does not care that he's putting people in danger with his disastrous and unqualified cabinet nominees and now cabinet members. Donald Trump doesn't care. But what he does care about is bad publicity, which he is certainly getting on one of the biggest issues for his administration, and that's the price of eggs, which just reached an all-time high. And when Donald Trump was confronted with it, he kind of melted down, crumbled, and lashed out. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, Donald Trump was confronted by a gaggle of reporters after he left the Daytona 500. They asked him a couple of questions, and the first one I want to get into comes right here.
Why is that? Why? That's all right. I don't mind. Let them do it. Let them do it. They're just hurting themselves if they do that. I can't imagine it, but it doesn't matter. We're having reciprocal tariffs.
This is what I'm talking about. She does not care about the trade wars that he is starting. He does not care that American companies will suffer. He does not care that prices will continue to rise. He just doesn't care about the people who he's hurting, because predominantly they are in red states, get the most federal funding. Red states need the most assistance from the government. These red states are being the most impacted by Donald Trump. Price hikes. They are being impacted most by Donald Trump's attacks on agencies, whichever ones you want to select, like it does not matter. Donald Trump does not care, and he's not going to care, even if, and it's already happened, his MAGA supporters turn on him as they lose their jobs, as they lose their food security, their medical insurance security. Donald Trump doesn't care. That's what's been abundantly clear. And now it is upon us to not just, I don't want to say rebel, but, feel better about being right. We shouldn't just point out, oh, you voted for Donald Trump, you've screwed yourself over. We have to use these very specific stories to show people that he is a failure, he is a liar, he is betrayed them. We knew he would. It's always going to happen, and we have to make a compelling case about that in the midterms and going forward. Because as we're going to get into later, Donald Trump's popularity is not where we'd like it to be, and it's clear that Donald Trump is becoming less popular with everyone on the world stage through J.D. Vance's help, and that kind of comes off in this clip, which we're going to talk about both of them.
I don't know if that's what he said. I don't think he said that. Yeah.
Sorry, someone said today that Russia is going to wage war on NATO. Do you agree with that? Do you have any concerns about?
No, I don't agree. I don't agree. Not even a little bit.
So first of all, I love how much Trump just throws JD under the bus. He doesn't care what he has to say. He doesn't care what he has to think. He just sat down as we covered for an interview with Elon Musk and Shan Hannity, not his vice president, his co-president. And Elon Musk JD just tweets and whines and complains and moans. And that's about all that comes out of him. in this administration. But on the Zelensky of it all, we talked about this in both what Zelensky had to say in Munich and what he had to say in his interview this morning on Meet the Press. But he is clearly trying to play mind games with Donald Trump. Zelensky is obviously a much smarter guy than Donald Trump, and so he's just trying to maneuver him to care enough. Of course, not because he has any humanity in him, but because he wants Donald Trump to think. And it is true that he will come off as a weak person if he allows Putin to walk all over him, which is what he has historically done. And that is the thing Donald Trump can't stand, is the bad press, which he is certainly getting in this clip right here.
Your egg prices have reached an all-time high. What's your
Which is what?
Egg prices have reached an all-time
Well,
high.
there's a clue. I mean, it was a long, before I ever got here, it was at an all-time. This didn't, remember, I've been here for 3 weeks. And when you saw the inflation numbers, I've been here for 3 weeks. I have had nothing to do with inflation. This was caused by Biden. I had 4 years of virtually no inflation. So I'm just taking over. But I'll tell you what, this country has made more progress in the last 3 weeks than it's made in the last 4 years. And we're respected again as a country. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Egg prices hitting all-time highs. All-time highs. Wasn't that not going to happen? Wasn't the opposite going to happen? Where am I? Savings Donald. You told me everything day one was going to be lower. Speaking of day one, you said before, day one, you were ending the war in Ukraine as that happened. That I miss a memo. I feel like I followed this stuff pretty closely. I'm sure you do as well. Doesn't seem like it's happened. Seems like a lot of promises that were kept were promises about plastic straws in the Gulf of Mexico. Y'all, we're not calling it that. It's the Gulf of Mexico and not anything that mattered. Renaming a body of water with a stupid name does not make eggs cheaper, obviously. And Trump is pretty afraid to confront that. Of course, he's blaming Biden. Ridiculous. Donald Trump has installed one of the craziest conspiracy theorists in the country at HAS. And now that there is a virus breaking out, yeah, he doesn't seem to care. And he's blaming Joe Biden. Great. Thanks. We need to drive home this point about his failures. We need to drive it home, and it's what Hakeem Jeffries was doing right here.
Well, Donald Trump and Republicans consistently promised that they were going to lower the high cost of living. And they've done the exact opposite. They've shown no interest in lowering costs in the United States of America, which are too high. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. The cost of living is too high in the United States of America. This country is too expensive, but they've broken their promise. They have no interest in improving the quality of life of hardworking American taxpayers. Instead, what they're trying to do, while they distract the American people, is to jam the GOP tax scam down the throats of people all across this country, all in service of massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors and wealthy corporations. It's a toxic bait and switch that is underway, and we will continue to push back forcefully.
But Donald Trump's favorability rating is actually higher than it ever was the first time around. Let me ask you, a recent poll by Marquette looked at several of the things that he has done or says that he is going to do, and 63% favor federal government's recognition of only two sexes. 60% favor deporting immigrants who entered the United States illegally. 60% favor expanding oil and gas production. 59% favor declaring an emergency at the southern border. Is there anything you are seeing that Trump is doing that you are in favor of, that you think is the right thing?
Let me say, as it relates to all of those issues, we're just at the beginning. And the core promise that Donald Trump made is that he's going to lower costs for everyday Americans. In fact, we were told that grocery prices would go down on day one, on January 20th. Costs aren't lower. In fact, costs are increasing. The price of eggs is skyrocketing out of control. Inflation is on the way up. That was the core promise that's been broken. With respect to immigration, listen, we have to secure the border. We have a broken immigration system, and we need to fix it in a comprehensive and bipartisan way. At the same period of time, as Democrats, we're going to protect dreamers. protect farm workers, and protect families who help our communities across the country thrive.
So I'm sure you saw Speaker of the House Johnson say the Democratic Party has no leader right now. You might expect it from him to say something like that. But your colleague, Don Beyer, big supporter of yours in the House, basically said the same thing. He said, we're still looking for that national spokesperson, and it could be that Hakeem, you, becomes that national voice. It hasn't happened yet. So are you effectively the leader of the Democratic Party nationally right now, the main spokesperson?
It's my honor to be House Democratic leader, and we're going to continue to work together in an all-hands-on-deck effort to push back against the far-right extremism that is being unleashed on this country with record velocity. We've got to fight in the courts, push back in the Congress, and continue to push back in the community. And as House Democrats, we're doing just that, particularly as it relates to their efforts to not only jam these massive tax cuts down the throats of the American people for the wealthy, well-off, and well-connected, but they want to stick working-class Americans, middle-class Americans, and everyday Americans with the bill by effectively ending health care as we know it, hurting children, hurting women, hurting people with disabilities, hurting older Americans, hurting everyday Americans by slashing and burning Medicaid to the ground, effectively trying to jam up the Affordable Care Act, and they're going to target Social Security and Medicare. We're pushing back forcefully against those efforts every day, every week, every month, every year, and that will continue.
Government funding runs out in less than a month now. We've seen over the past 2 years, Republicans cannot or have not been able to pass government funding without Democratic support. Some of your supporters on the outside are saying you should use as leverage the possibility of a government shutdown to push back at some of what the Trump administration is doing right now. What will you need from Mike Johnson and from the Republicans to agree to go along with efforts to fund the government?
Republicans have consistently shut down the government in the past, and it would be no surprise if they do just that this time around. There's a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. They have a responsibility to make sure that government remains open and can function. As Democrats, with respect to any spending agreement, our view, our test is whether that spending agreement meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, our national security, and certainly the economic well-being of everyday Americans. Rosa DeLauro is the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. She's in off and on conversations with her Republican colleague in the House, as well as our Republican and Democratic colleagues in the Senate. We'll see how that unfolds over the next few weeks, but we are going to make sure that any agreement that is ultimately signed off on has to be one that meets the needs of the American people, and it has to be implemented fully in compliance with the law.
And just quickly before you go, have you had any conversations with the White House? Have you talked to Chief of Staff Susie Wiles or the President about this?
I have not had any conversation with the White House, but I do expect that as we get closer and closer to March 14th, that those conversations will perhaps intensify. And at the end of the day, what we have been clear about is that this budget that is working its way through the House of Representatives is a non-starter. Every single Democrat opposed it a few days ago in the Budget Committee, and I believe that that will continue to be our position because it's out of control.
We need to take these individual stories and apply them more broadly to the message about the failures of the Trump administration that we've already seen. That is how we succeed. That is how we win. We make it very specific, and we make it very clear on how he has failed and how he is hurting you. And I also think it's important to note he does not care at all, and is never going to. The only thing that can make him care is a little bit of public pressure, but again, that's only to satisfy his ego. And so we have to bring that pressure and we have to tell these stories. And it's what we're going to be doing on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.